Hi, my name is Sarah Downie, and I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about my textile art. I have been embroidering and working with textiles I started when I was a child, actually. My mother taught me to embroider when I was quite young, probably around 7 or 8. I do have some pieces from that time, but unfortunately not with me today. But after I learned how to do that, and I took to embroidery and crewel for a number of years, and then I discovered knitting. And for most of my life, I've been a knitter. But during the pandemic, I was knitting so much, my hands began to cramp up, and I thought I was developing arthritis. I probably have, and I wanted to find something else to work with my hands, and so I picked up embroidery again a few years ago. And then I moved to the Berkshires. I moved to the Berkshires about 3 years ago. And everything just sort of came together. The idea of working with textiles, working with embroidery, and embroidering sort of wildlife and the natural beauty that is around me, it just all kind of came together. And I've been turning out many embroidery pieces over the past 3 years, and I just keep going. So I'm very happy to share some of them with you today. So one thing that I have discovered that I really love to embroider and work with various fabrics for is chickens. Chickens are a lot of fun to create because you can basically do what you want in terms of color. They're so colorful. And they're very happy or they make me happy because I get to kind of have no rules other to follow a very sort of simple chicken body and create something that looks really fun. And chickens are such amusing individuals, all of them, that I just like to work focus on them and make them fun. And it's really like whatever color I throw in or whatever I do, it seems to work out and be fun. So here is one of my early chicken pieces. This one is fairly two-dimensional, although the feathers kind of lift a little bit from the backing fabric. But since I started with chickens, I sort of got intrigued with doing more three-dimensional embroidery. And chickens are a good vehicle for doing three-dimensional embroidery, but so are flowers. So this piece here, I have my chickens again. And I also discovered that embroidery doesn't just have to sit on the fabric. It can be very three-dimensional, almost as three-dimensional as you want it to be. And the way you create that is you kind of work with wires. It's a technique. These flowers here are an example of that technique. The flowers are coming off the backing fabric. And it's a technique that's been around for several hundred years, became very popular in the 17th century and was known as stump work. I'm not quite sure, nobody's quite sure why it's called stump work when it really is just three-dimensional embroidery. But one of the explanations is that women were taking blocks of wood, little tiny blocks of wood or little stumps, stretching fabric over it and embroidering over it. And some of the examples of stump work from that period are these sort of boxes that young women would make that they would keep keepsakes in, and then they'd have little wooden figurines around the box covered with fabric and embroidered on that fabric. It's really quite beautiful. But in any case, I discovered stump work, and I applied it to flowers, and the way it works with flowers, and people do this with insect wings as well, is that you wrap embroidery around wire, and then you cut that wire off the fabric that it's on and attach it to your main fabric, and it creates a really kind of cool effect, and I've done it here with the leaves as well. So I hope to continue exploring with three-dimensional embroidery or stump work, and potentially moving into insects, or I've even seen someone did a three-dimensional embroidered can of sardines, which you sort of opened up the top piece of fabric and there were embroidered sardines inside. So people can get very, very creative with these. Moving on to this piece over here, this is more sort of a winter scene, and I have a lot of deer on my property, and the deer I wanted to kind of reflect in a more abstract scene. I've got flowers and snow going on at the same time, as well as deer and bunny rabbits. And the bunny rabbits, I tried to make them a little three-dimensional as well by tufting up their tails. So that's quite fun. I also got my sewing machine, into the act by doing most of the embroidery on top with my machine rather than by hand. And it does go a lot faster. It also means you don't really have that much control over your work, because the machine can sometimes do what it wants to do. So it's a bit of a skill, but quite fun. And then the next piece I wanted to talk about was my owl. And this, again, we have a bunch of owls on our property. And so I thought an owl would be really fun to create, and in connection with sort of a scene not unlike what you might see around here in the Berkshires, with hills and different colors, sort of a fall scene. And then I added, hopefully you can see it on the camera, but I added some beads and some sequins to create more of a glittering night sky, as well as a three-dimensional moon. So that was a lot of fun to make. And the owl, the things with feathers are just so much fun to embroider, because they're really not difficult, and you can make the feathers look so realistic by just kind of attaching them to the fabric, and it just works out. It's so much fun to make birds. And speaking of birds, because I was finding it so much fun to make birds, I decided to try completely three-dimensional, and I made my little owls here. And these owls are eventually going to sit on some logs, but not too much embroidery. These are sort of more textile sculptures. But I started with the owls and enjoyed making them so much, enjoyed wrapping tape around wire and sticking the wire into their bodies, and having so much fun with sticking some crazy fabric on them, and making their ears look, kind of delightful. Had so much fun with the owls that I think I will try to make three-dimensional chickens and other birds, maybe crows. The sky is basically the limit. There's just so many birds that I see every day that I think, oh, I would love to sculpt that, and to create some sort of colorful, maybe not in the case of crows, but otherwise pretty colorful bird sculpture. So I do have a website. I don't have these pieces here in person, but hopefully you can see them on the screen. The first one I want to talk about is another chicken piece, very similar to this one, to the one with the raised stumpwork flowers that I was talking about. And that was just, I just basically created that because I wanted to do a variation on the theme of chickens. And the next one is, unsurprisingly, another chicken. This was a chicken, so the Beckett Art Center had a challenge whereby it challenged everybody to, whoever wanted to, local artists, to make whatever they wanted to make with a coffee bean sack. So I put a big rooster on a coffee bean sack, sort of a larger and more how to say it? It's sort of almost an explosive rooster in the way that I tried to make the feathers really sort of explode off the fabric. And that was a lot of fun to make. And the Beckett Art Center auctioned all of the coffee bean sack entries, auctioned them off with proceeds going to support programs at that art center. So that was a lot of fun. And I have another piece. This is a completely winter scene. This is a sleeping fox at the bottom of a tree, and I had a lot of fun with this, making the snow and making the fox look very peaceful. Again, a lot of fun to make. And then my final one, of course, I have chickens in it again, but it's sort of a morning scene in the Berkshires with chickens and sheep and some flowers, and the chickens and sheep are sort of running around. So that was also a lot of fun to make. So thank you for listening to me today, talk to you about my work. It's so much fun to make. I am on Instagram at Sarah's Fiber Arts, and I think my address will show up at the bottom of the video. And my website is sarahdownie.art. And thank you so much. It's been great talking with you today.